They say some men chase youth to outrun their own mortality, but I never imagined my husband would replace me with a woman old enough to be his mother. The champagne flute slipped from my fingers when I saw them enter the charity gala together. Maxwell Harris, my husband of 18 years, tech millionaire with his hand possessively placed on the small of Vivian Reeves's back, the 65-year-old former runway model with her perfect silver hair and elegant posture, looked like she'd stepped straight out of a luxury jewelry ad, smiling up at my husband like they shared some delicious secret. "Maxwell, darling, who's that woman staring at us?" I heard Vivian ask as they moved through the crowd, her voice carrying just enough for me to catch it. My husband glanced over, his eyes widening slightly when they met mine. For a moment I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, perhaps? Or just annoyance at having his perfect evening interrupted. "That's my wife," he replied, his voice flat as if describing a piece of furniture he'd grown tired of. "Well, soon-to-be ex-wife. Natalie, are you okay?" David, my friend and colleague who had invited me to this event, bent down to pick up the broken glass while I stood frozen, watching my husband parade his new relationship across the room. "I didn't know he would be here," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the orchestra. "And I definitely didn't know he would be with her." Maxwell hadn't noticed the broken glass or my distress. He was busy introducing Vivian to the CEO of a major investment firm, his hand never leaving her back. I'd suspected something was wrong for months. The late nights, the business trips that seemed to multiply, the way he barely looked at me when we were in the same room, but seeing it confirmed so publicly felt like having my heart ripped out and displayed for everyone to see. "I need to leave," I said, turning toward the exit, but I was too late. As I moved through the crowd, I heard his voice. "Behind me? Natalie? I didn't expect to see you here." I turned slowly, composing my face into what I hoped was a neutral expression. Maxwell stood a few feet away, looking uncomfortable but not guilty. Vivian was beside him, studying me with curious eyes. "Clearly," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "I was just leaving." "Wait," Maxwell said, stepping forward. "I'd like you to meet Vivian." The audacity of the request made me want to scream, but years of attending corporate functions as the supportive wife had taught me how to maintain composure in uncomfortable situations. "I know who she is," I said. "Everyone knows who Vivian Reeves is." Vivian smiled, extending a hand with perfectly manicured nails. "It's lovely to meet you, Natalie. Maxwell has told me so much about you." I ignored the outstretched hand. "Funny, he's told me nothing about you." Maxwell cleared his throat. "Natalie, can we talk privately for a moment?" "Now you want to talk?" I laughed, the sound brittle even to my own ears. "After months of silence? After bringing what is she, Maxwell, your girlfriend, your midlife crisis, to an event where you knew my colleagues would be?" People nearby were beginning to notice the tension, turning to watch with poorly disguised interest. "Please," Maxwell said quietly. "Not here." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months, the man I had supported through the early days of his startup. The man whose clothes I had ironed while he worked 18-hour days, the man I had nursed through pneumonia when he refused to take a break from building his empire. He looked different now. Expensive haircut, designer suit, a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Fine," I said. "Tomorrow, your office, 2:00. Without waiting for his response, I walked away, head held high despite the whispers that followed me out the door. The next day, I sat across from Maxwell at his massive desk on the top floor of his gleaming downtown skyscraper, the headquarters of Harris Technologies. I had helped design this space 5 years ago, choosing the furniture, the artwork, even the plants that thrived in the natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows. Now I felt like a stranger in a place I had once considered an extension of our home. "I'm leaving you," Maxwell said without preamble. "I've been trying to find the right time to tell you, but you were too busy sleeping with a woman old enough to be your mother," I interrupted. Maxwell flinched. "It's not like that. Vivian and we connect on a level I didn't think was possible. She understands me." "And I don't? After 18 years together?" You knew who I was when we got married, Maxwell said, his voice hardening. You were my assistant. You saw how driven I was, how focused on building something that would last. Yes, I did, I agreed. And I supported you every step of the way. I put my own career on hold to help you build your dream. And I'm grateful for that, Maxwell said, though his tone suggested otherwise. But people change, Natalie. What I want now is different from what I wanted then. And what you want now is a 65-year-old model. Maxwell's expression darkened. Don't reduce her to her age or her former profession. Vivian is brilliant. She's built her own business empire after her modeling career ended. She challenges me intellectually in ways you never could. The words hit me hard, because I was too busy managing our household, planning your business dinners, making sure you had clean socks. I never asked you to do those things, Maxwell said dismissively. You chose that role. I stared at him, suddenly seeing with perfect clarity the selfishness that had always been there, hidden beneath charm and ambition. You're right, I said quietly. I did choose that role, and now I'm choosing something different. I stood up, smoothing down my dress, a simple blue sheath I had bought on sale years ago, nothing like the designer clothes Vivian probably wore. I want half of everything, I said. The company, the properties, the investments. Half. Maxwell laughed. You're not getting half of my company. My lawyers will make sure of that. Your company wouldn't exist without me, I reminded him. I was there when you were working out of our garage. I answered phones, filed paperwork, brought you coffee at 3 a.m. I have emails, texts, witnesses who will testify to my contributions. No judge will give you half based on being a supportive wife, Maxwell said, but I could see uncertainty flicker in his eyes. We'll see, I replied. I've already hired Patricia Reynolds. Maxwell's confident expression faltered. Patricia Reynolds was known for securing record-breaking settlements for discarded spouses of wealthy entrepreneurs. You're being vindictive, he accused. No, I corrected him. I'm being fair. You want to leave me for another woman after 18 years? Fine. But you'll pay for that choice. As I walked out of his office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the exhilarating freedom of standing up for myself. That night I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at old photos spread across the table. Pictures of Maxwell and me in our 20s, working side by side in that tiny garage office where Harris Technologies was born. Photos from business trips that had doubled as rare vacations. Images of us at the company's first major product launch, both of us exhausted but triumphant. I picked up my favorite photo, Maxwell asleep on our old couch, surrounded by paperwork while I sat on the floor nearby, typing code for the software that would eventually make him millions. We were partners then, equals in everything but the credit. I traced my finger over the photo, remembering how I'd taught myself coding at night after my assistant duties were done, just so I could help Maxwell debug the software when his lead programmer quit. He'd never officially acknowledged my contribution to that critical project, but the company wouldn't have survived without it. The divorce proceedings began with a fury I hadn't anticipated. Maxwell's legal team came at me like I was trying to steal the crown jewels rather than claim my fair share of what we'd built together. They portrayed me as a gold digger who had married Maxwell for his potential wealth, conveniently ignoring that when we married, he had nothing but student loans and big dreams. They're calling me an opportunist, I told Patricia during our third meeting, as if I somehow knew Maxwell would be successful when I married him. Patricia, a sharp-featured woman in her 50s with a reputation for being ruthless, smiled thinly. That's standard procedure. They're trying to rewrite history, but we have something they don't. What's that? The truth, she said, sliding a folder across her desk, and evidence to back it up. The folder contained statements from former employees who remembered me working alongside Maxwell in those early days. There were emails where Maxwell himself had credited me with saving the company during financial difficulties. Bank records showing how I'd used my own small inheritance to keep the business afloat during a particularly rough quarter. This is good, I said, flipping through the documents. But will it be enough? It's a start, Patricia replied. But we need more. I want you to make a list of every contribution you made to Harris Technologies, no matter how small it seems. Every late night, every client you entertained, every idea you contributed. Nothing is insignificant. That night, I started the list. What began as a few bullet points soon expanded to pages. I remembered things I hadn't thought about in years. How I'd suggested the user interface that became the company's signature style. How I'd maintained relationships with key clients when Maxwell was too busy to call them back. How I'd edited every important presentation and proposal until they were perfect. By morning, I had 12 pages of detailed contributions spanning 18 years. Reading through them, I felt a strange mix of pride and anger. Pride at how much I had accomplished. Anger at how easily Maxwell had dismissed it all. Meanwhile, Maxwell and Vivian's relationship became tabloid fodder. They were photographed at exclusive restaurants, attending gallery openings, boarding private jets to exotic locations. In every photo, Maxwell looked besotted, gazing at Vivian like she was the answer to questions he hadn't known he was asking. "He looks happy," I admitted to Patricia, during a particularly difficult meeting after seeing yet another photo spread of the couple in a glossy magazine. "Maybe I should just settle." "He looks like a man trying to convince himself he made the right choice," Patricia corrected me, "and we're not settling for less than you deserve." The divorce battle dragged on for months. Maxwell fought me on everything. The house, the art collection, the vacation properties, and especially his company shares. His lawyers tried every tactic, from painting me as greedy to suggesting I was mentally unstable. "They've offered a settlement," Patricia told me one afternoon, 6 months into the proceedings. $10 million in the house. "And the company shares?" I asked. "None. That's their line in the sand." I shook my head. "Not acceptable. The company is worth billions, and I helped build it from nothing. I want my fair share." Patricia smiled, the expression of a predator who'd just spotted weakness in her prey. "That's what I told them you'd say. We go back to court next week." That evening, as I was reviewing documents for the upcoming hearing, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It contained a link to a gossip website with a headline that made my heart stop. Tech millionaire Maxwell Harris and former supermodel Vivian Reeves expecting twins through surrogate. The article included photos of Maxwell and Vivian leaving a fertility clinic, quotes from sources close to the couple about their excitement to become parents, and speculation about the surrogate's identity. I stared at my phone, unable to process what I was reading. Maxwell and I had tried for years to have children. We'd gone through 3 rounds of IVF, each failure more devastating than the last. I'd endured painful procedures, hormone injections that made me emotional and bloated, the crushing disappointment month after month. Eventually, Maxwell had said he was content with just the 2 of us, that children would distract from his business goals. I'd reluctantly accepted that our family would be just us, burying my dreams of motherhood to support his ambitions. And now he was having twins with Vivian. I called Patricia immediately. "Have you seen the news?" I asked when she answered. "I have," Patricia replied, "and before you ask, no, this doesn't change our strategy. In fact, it might strengthen our position." "How?" I asked, my voice breaking. "He's starting a family with her. He's moving on completely. He's showing that he can afford to support multiple households," Patricia explained. "And he's demonstrating that family was always important to him. He just didn't want that family with you." The bluntness of the statement made me flinch, but I recognized the truth in it. Maxwell hadn't just left me for another woman. He'd left me for another life entirely. The next day, I ran into Maxwell at the courthouse. He was alone, looking tired but somehow energized at the same time. When he saw me, he hesitated before approaching. "Natalie," he said, his voice softer than it had been in our recent interactions. "I assume you've heard our news." "Congratulations," I replied, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "Twins. How exciting for you." "I wanted to tell you myself, but what? You thought it might hurt me to know you're having children with her after telling me for years that you didn't want them with me." Maxwell had the decency to look uncomfortable. "It's different now." I'm in a different place in my life." "Yes, you are," I agreed. "And so am I." As I turned to walk away, Maxwell caught my arm. "Natalie, wait. There's something you should know about the surrogate." I pulled my arm free. "I don't care who's carrying your children, Maxwell. That's your business now, not mine." "But it is your business," he insisted, "because the surrogate is—" "Mr. Harris," Patricia's voice cut through our conversation as she approached from down the hall. "I believe your lawyer is looking for you, something about new evidence we've submitted." Maxwell glanced between us, then nodded curtly. "We'll talk later, Natalie." As he walked away, I turned to Patricia. "What was that about? What new evidence?" "We've subpoenaed his personal emails," Patricia said with a satisfied smile, "and found some very interesting exchanges between him and Vivian dating back 3 years. 3 years? I repeated, stunned. "But that would mean that their relationship began long before he left you," Patricia confirmed, "which changes everything about this case." I felt dizzy with the revelation. 3 years. While I was still planning our anniversary celebrations, while I was still bringing him soup when he was sick, while I was still believing in our marriage, Maxwell had been involved with Vivian. "I need to sit down," I said, finding a nearby bench. "Take your time," Patricia advised, "but when you're ready, we need to discuss our next move. This evidence gives us significant leverage." I spent that night poring over the email printouts Patricia had given me. The exchanges between Maxwell and Vivian were mostly professional at first, discussions about a potential collaboration between his tech company and her luxury brand consultancy. But over time they became personal, then intimate. There were messages where they discussed their future together, where Maxwell complained about feeling trapped in our marriage, where he called Vivian his intellectual equal in ways that made it clear he didn't see me that way. The most painful email was dated 3 years ago, just after my 3rd failed IVF attempt. While I was still recovering physically and emotionally from the procedure, Maxwell had written to Vivian, "N is devastated about the IVF, but maybe it's for the best. I can't imagine being tied to her forever through a child. With you, I can envision a different kind of future." I read that line over and over until the words blurred through my tears. All those years I'd blamed myself for our inability to conceive, Maxwell had been relieved. While I grieved what I thought was our shared loss, he'd been planning his escape. The next morning, I forwarded the emails to my therapist with a simple message. "Can we meet today?" Dr. Levine had been helping me process the divorce for months, but this revelation required immediate attention. She squeezed me in for an afternoon session. "How are you holding up?" she asked, as I settled into the familiar chair in her office. "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought I was angry before, but this is different. This feels like everything I believed about my marriage was a lie." "Not everything," Dr. Levine said gently. "Your feelings were real. Your commitment was real. Maxwell's deception doesn't invalidate the life you built or the person you became during those years. But it changes how I see that life," I argued. "Every memory is tainted now. When did it start? Was he thinking about her when we celebrate our 15th anniversary? Was he messaging her from our bed?" Dr. Levine let me vent for several minutes before redirecting the conversation. "Natalie, these are natural questions, but they don't serve your healing. The past is fixed. What matters now is how you move forward." "How do I move forward when he's having children with her? Children he never wanted with me?" "By recognizing that his choices reflect his limitations, not yours," she replied. "Maxwell couldn't appreciate what he had with you. That's his loss, not a statement about your worth." I nodded, trying to absorb her words. "Patricia says these emails strengthen our case. And how do you feel about that?" "Vindicated," I said immediately, but also sad. I never wanted our divorce to be this ugly. I never wanted to hate him. "Hate and love are 2 sides of the same coin," Dr. Levine observed. "They both require intense emotional investment. The opposite of both is indifference. That's what you're working toward, not hating Maxwell, but being indifferent to him." Indifference seemed impossible at that moment, but I understood her point. As long as I hated Maxwell, he still had power over me. The next day in court, Patricia presented the emails as evidence of Maxwell's long-term deception. His lawyer objected, claiming they were obtained improperly, but the judge overruled him. Maxwell sat stiffly at the defendant's table, avoiding my gaze as his private words were read aloud. During a recess, Maxwell approached me in the hallway. "Was that necessary?" he demanded, humiliating me in front of everyone. "Was it necessary to lie to me for 3 years?" I countered. "To let me go through IVF treatments while you were planning your life with someone else?" "I never meant to hurt you," he said, his voice dropping. "Things with Vivian, they just happened." "Things don't just happen, Maxwell. You made choices. Every secret meeting, every hidden email, those were choices." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. "What do you want, Natalie? More money? Fine, take another 5 million. Just stop this public spectacle." I laughed, the sound echoing in the marble hallway. "You still don't get it. This isn't about money. This is about recognition. You built your empire on my support, my ideas, my sacrifice. I want what I earned." Before he could respond, Patricia appeared at my side. "The judge is ready to resume," she said, giving Maxwell a cold look. "And, Mr. Harris, I'd advise against approaching my client without counsel present." Back in the courtroom, the judge seemed troubled by the email evidence. He questioned Maxwell directly about the timeline of his relationship with Vivian and his decision to pursue fertility treatments with her so soon after leaving our marriage. "Your Honor," Maxwell's lawyer interjected, "my client's current relationship has no bearing on the division of assets from his previous marriage." "I disagree," the judge replied. "Mr. Harris's actions suggest a premeditated plan to leave his marriage while minimizing his financial obligations. The court takes a dim view of such behavior." By the end of the day, the judge had ordered a temporary arrangement. I would retain the house and receive monthly support while the court evaluated the company's value and my contributions to it. As we left the courthouse, Patricia was jubilant. "We've got him on the ropes," she said. "The judge clearly sees through his act." I should have felt triumphant, but instead I felt drained. "What happens now?" "Now we press our advantage," Patricia replied. "I think we can get you 25% of the company, maybe more. 25% of Harris Technologies would make me a billionaire on paper." The thought was dizzying. That evening, I received another text from the unknown number that had sent me the surrogacy news. This time, it contained a single sentence: "Ask Maxwell about the surrogate's identity." I stared at the message, my mind racing. Who was sending these texts? And why was the surrogate's identity important? I called Patricia, who answered despite the late hour. "I just got a strange text," I told her, then read it aloud. "Interesting," she said. "I'll have my investigator look into it. In the meantime, don't respond." But curiosity gnawed at me. Who had Maxwell and Vivian chosen to carry their children? And why would that information matter to me? The next morning, I woke to breaking news. Photos of Maxwell and Vivian leaving a high-end maternity clinic, accompanied by a young woman whose face was partially obscured by large sunglasses and a hat. The caption read, "Tech billionaire Maxwell Harris and fiancée Vivian Reeves attend prenatal appointment with surrogate." I studied the photo, trying to get a better look at the surrogate. Something about her posture, the way she walked, seemed familiar. My phone rang. Patricia. "Have you seen the news?" she asked without preamble. "The clinic photos. Yes, just now." "My investigator identified the surrogate," Patricia said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "It's Jessica Chen." The name hit me like a physical blow. Jessica Chen, my former assistant at Harris Technologies, a young woman I had mentored and trusted. She had left the company 6 months before Maxwell left me, citing a family emergency that required her to relocate. "Jessica," I whispered. "But why would she?" "Money, most likely," Patricia replied. "Surrogates for high-profile clients can command premium fees. But there's more, Natalie. According to my sources, Jessica is carrying twins that were conceived using eggs harvested 3 years ago." 3 years ago, I repeated, the implications slowly dawning on me. "When Maxwell and Vivian first got involved." "Exactly. They've been planning this for years, Natalie, while you were still trying for a baby with him." The revelation about Jessica left me reeling. I remembered hiring her fresh out of college, impressed by her intelligence and work ethic. I'd taken her under my wing, invited her to our home for dinner parties, confided in her about my fertility struggles, all while she was apparently forming a connection with my husband that would eventually lead to this betrayal. "I want to talk to her," I told Patricia. "That's not advisable," she cautioned. "Any contact could be construed as harassment and might damage our case." "I don't care about the case right now," I said, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. "I need answers." Patricia sighed. "If you insist on doing this, at least let me arrange it properly. No direct contact. We'll have my investigator set up a meeting on neutral ground." 2 days later, I sat in a quiet corner of a hotel lobby, waiting for Jessica. Patricia's investigator had contacted her with a vague story about a potential job opportunity. Nothing that would alert Maxwell or his legal team. When Jessica walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Her pregnancy was more visible in person than it had been in the paparazzi photos. She wore a loose-fitting dress that couldn't quite conceal her growing belly. When she spotted me instead of the fictional recruiter she was expecting, she froze. "Natalie," she said, her voice barely audible. I should go." "Please," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Just 5 minutes." She hesitated, then slowly lowered herself into the chair, one protective hand resting on her stomach. "How far along are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. 6 months, she replied, not meeting my eyes. "Twins, I hear. Congratulations." Jessica looked up then, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance. "I'm just the carrier, they're not mine." "No," I agreed. "They're Maxwell and Vivian's, created while Maxwell was still my husband." She flinched at the directness of my statement. "It wasn't like that?" "Then tell me what it was like, Jessica. Help me understand how my assistant and my husband planned this behind my back." Jessica took a deep breath. "Maxwell approached me about the surrogacy after I'd already left the company. He said he and Vivian needed someone they could trust, someone discreet." "And the eggs? The ones harvested 3 years ago?" Her eyes widened slightly. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter how I know," I interrupted. "I want to hear it from you." Jessica looked down at her hands. "Vivian had her eggs harvested before she met Maxwell. She was in her early 60s then, and wanted to preserve the option of having children if she ever met the right partner." "And Maxwell was that partner?" I said flatly. "He loves her," Jessica said, as if that explained everything. "When they decided to have children together, they used her preserved eggs and his contribution. While he was still married to me," I reminded her. "While I was still going through fertility treatments, believing he wanted children with me." Jessica had the grace to look ashamed. I didn't know about the timing at first. By the time I realized, I'd already signed the contracts, taken the money. "How much?" I asked. "How much did it take for you to betray someone who mentored you?" $2 million, she whispered, "and a job at Vivian's company after the delivery." The amount was staggering. $2 million to carry Maxwell's children he had never wanted with me. "Do you know what the worst part is, Jessica?" I said, leaning forward. "It's not that you're carrying his children. It's that you sat across from me at my dinner table, listened to me talk about my failed IVF attempts, watched me cry over my inability to give Maxwell a family, and you said nothing." "I'm sorry," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you." "That seems to be a common refrain from people who've betrayed me," I observed. "No one ever means to cause pain. They just prioritize their own desires over others' feelings." Jessica wiped at her tears. "What are you going to do? Are you going to tell Maxwell about this meeting?" "No," I said, standing up. "This conversation stays between us, but I want you to remember something, Jessica. Those children you're carrying, they deserve better than parents who built their relationship on lies and manipulation. I hope for their sake that Maxwell and Vivian become better people than they've been so far." As I walked away, Jessica called after me. "Natalie, wait. There's something else you should know. I turned back. "The embryos?" she said. "They created 6. I'm carrying 2, but there are 4 more in storage." The information didn't seem particularly relevant, but I nodded acknowledgement before leaving the hotel. When I told Patricia about the meeting and what I'd learned, she was thoughtful. "The timing of the egg harvesting is crucial," she said. "It proves they were planning a future together 3 years ago, which strengthens our claim that Maxwell was deliberately hiding assets and planning his exit from the marriage." "Does it matter at this point?" I asked, suddenly tired of the whole fight. "We've already established that he was having an affair." "It matters because it speaks to intent," Patricia explained. "An affair could be a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated, years-long deception that included family planning, while actively misleading you about his desire for children." She was right, of course. This wasn't just about Maxwell leaving me for another woman. This was about him systematically constructing a parallel life while maintaining the fiction of our marriage. The next day, Patricia presented our new information to the judge, carefully omitting how we'd obtained it to protect me from accusations of witness tampering. Maxwell's lawyer objected strenuously, but the damage was done. The judge's expression grew increasingly severe as he listened to the timeline of events. "Mr. Harris," the judge said finally, "this court takes a dim view of parties who attempt to hide assets or misrepresent their intentions during divorce proceedings. The evidence suggests you began planning your exit from this marriage years ago, while simultaneously denying Mrs. Harris the family she desired and diverting company resources to your new relationship." Maxwell started to protest, but his lawyer placed a restraining hand on his arm. "In light of these revelations," the judge continued, "I'm inclined to reconsider Mrs. Harris's claim to a substantial portion of Harris Technologies. We'll reconvene next week for my final ruling." As we left the courtroom, I caught Maxwell's eye. For the first time since our separation, he looked genuinely afraid. "If you're as shocked as I am by this level of betrayal, hit the like button so we can expose the truth about how some powerful men discard the women who helped build their success." The divorce was finalized on a rainy Tuesday in March, nearly a year after I'd first seen Maxwell with Vivian at the charity gala. The judge's ruling exceeded even Patricia's optimistic projections. I received the house, a significant cash settlement, and, most importantly, a 30% stake in Harris Technologies. It wasn't the half I had initially demanded, but it was enough to make me one of the wealthiest women in the city and ensure I would have a voice in the company I had helped build. Maxwell was furious, of course. As we left the courthouse for the last time, he approached me, his face tight with anger. "Are you happy now?" he demanded. "You've taken nearly a third of my company." "Our company," I corrected him. "And yes, I am happy. Not because I've taken anything from you, but because I've finally claimed what was always mine." Maxwell and Vivian's twins were born a month after our divorce was finalized. A boy and a girl, delivered by Jessica through a scheduled C-section. The news was announced with a glossy photo spread in an exclusive lifestyle magazine, showing Maxwell holding his son and Vivian cradling her daughter, both of them looking tired but ecstatic. I didn't seek out the photos, but they were impossible to avoid. They appeared on news websites, social media feeds, even on a billboard advertising the magazine as I drove downtown. "Are you okay?" David asked when he caught me staring at the cover in a bookstore window. He'd become a steady presence in my life since that fateful charity gala, offering friendship without pressure or expectations. "Not really," I admitted, "but I will be." The truth was, seeing Maxwell with his newborn children reopened wounds I thought had begun to heal. Not because I still wanted him. Those feelings had died a natural death months ago, but because those babies represented everything I had been denied. The family I had wanted. The future I had planned. "It's normal to feel this way," Dr. Levine assured me during our weekly session. "You're grieving not just the end of your marriage, but the loss of a possible life you had imagined." "I'm 39, I said quietly. "By the time I meet someone new, build a relationship, reach the point of having children. There are many paths to parenthood," she reminded me, "and many ways to build a fulfilling life. The question is, What do you want your next chapter to look like? It was a good question, one I hadn't allowed myself to consider fully. For so long, my identity had been tied to Maxwell and his company. Even during the divorce, I had been focused on claiming my fair share, rather than imagining what I might do with it. With my therapist's encouragement, I enrolled in business classes at the local university. I had always been good with numbers and organization, skills that had benefited Maxwell's company, but that I had never fully developed for myself. As a significant shareholder in Harris Technologies, I received quarterly reports and invitations to shareholder meetings. I attended these meetings not out of spite, but because the company represented my financial future. I needed to understand its operations, its challenges, its potential. At my first meeting, I sat quietly in the back, observing. Maxwell, at the head of the conference table, faltered briefly when he saw me, but quickly recovered. Vivian wasn't present. She was presumably at home with their 3-month-old twins. After the meeting, several board members approached me, curious about my presence. I introduced myself confidently, asked intelligent questions about the company's new product line, and exchanged business cards. I wasn't there to cause drama, I was there to protect my investment. As months passed, I found myself looking forward to these meetings. I prepared thoroughly, researching industry trends and competitor strategies. I began to offer suggestions, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as other board members responded positively to my ideas. Maxwell watched this transformation with visible discomfort. The woman he had dismissed as intellectually unchallenging was proving herself to be a valuable voice in his company. A year after the divorce, I launched my own business consultancy, leveraging my experience and the connections I had made through Harris Technologies. I specialized in helping small startups navigate the challenges I had faced alongside Maxwell in those early years. My first client was a young woman with a promising app for healthcare coordination. I helped her secure funding, develop a business plan, and avoid the pitfalls that sink so many new ventures. When the app was featured in a major tech publication, I felt a satisfaction deeper than anything I had experienced during my marriage. This was my success. Not something I had facilitated for someone else, but something I had created through my own knowledge and effort. 2 years after the divorce, I attended the annual charity gala, the same event where I had first seen Maxwell with Vivian. This time I arrived alone but not lonely, confident in my simple but elegant black dress and the life I had built for myself. Maxwell and Vivian were there, of course. They were major donors, their names prominently displayed on the event program. Vivian looked stunning as always, her silver hair styled in a sophisticated updo, her dress probably costing more than most people's monthly rent. But there was something different about her, a tightness around her eyes, a forced quality to her smile. Maxwell looked worse. He had lost weight and not in a healthy way. His suit, though expensive, hung loosely on his frame. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, visible even from across the room. I was talking with a potential client when I felt a presence beside me. I turned to find Vivian standing there, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "May I join you?" she asked, offering one of the glasses to me. Surprised, I accepted the drink and excused myself from my conversation. "I've been wanting to talk to you," Vivian said, leading me to a quieter corner of the ballroom. "Without Maxwell hovering—" "About what?" I asked cautiously. Vivian took a sip of champagne, studying me over the rim of her glass. "You're doing well," she observed. "Your consultancy is getting attention. I hear you've helped several women-led startups secure significant funding." "I have," I confirmed, wondering where this conversation was heading. "Good," Vivian said with what seemed like genuine approval. "Maxwell underestimated you. He still does." I didn't know how to respond to that. I hadn't expected anything resembling support from the woman who had replaced me. "How are the twins?" I asked, changing the subject. Something flickered across Vivian's face. Pain, exhaustion, regret. It was gone too quickly for me to identify. "They're challenging," she admitted. "Beautiful, brilliant, but exhausting. I'd forgotten what it's like to care for small children." "You've done it before?" I asked, surprised. Vivian nodded. "I have a daughter from my first marriage. She's 40 now, with children of her own." She laughed softly. I'm a grandmother to teenagers and a mother to toddlers. Life has a strange sense of timing. There was a weariness in her voice that made me look at her more closely. Behind the perfect makeup and designer dress was a woman who appeared tired, deeply, profoundly tired. "Maxwell isn't much help, I imagine," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. Vivian's smile was sad. "He tries in his way. But his company will always be his first priority. I knew that going in." "Yes," I agreed. "I knew that too." We stood in silence for a moment, two women who had loved the same difficult man, who had both believed they could be the exception to his self-absorption. "I should get back to Maxwell," Vivian said finally. "He gets anxious when I talk to people without him." The comment was revealing in its casualness. I remembered that feeling. The constant awareness of Maxwell's moods, the careful calibration of my behavior to avoid triggering his insecurities. "It was nice talking to you, Vivian," I said, meaning it despite everything. Vivian hesitated, then said quietly, "There's something you should know. Those embryos Jessica mentioned to you, the 4 still in storage, they're yours." I stared at her, not comprehending. "What? The eggs used to create them were harvested during your last IVF cycle," Vivian explained, her voice low. "Maxwell told the clinic to freeze all viable embryos without telling you. He was already planning to leave, but he wanted insurance, I suppose." "Insurance?" I repeated, my mind struggling to process this information. "In case things didn't work out with me," Vivian clarified. "He kept his options open, as always." The revelation left me speechless. Somewhere in a fertility clinic freezer were 4 embryos, potential children, created from my eggs and Maxwell's sperm. Children that could have been mine if Maxwell hadn't hidden their existence from me. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally managed to ask. "Because I'm leaving him," Vivian said simply. "The twins and I deserve better than to be Maxwell's second priority, and you deserve to know about those embryos. What you do with that information is up to you." Before I could respond, Vivian walked away, her posture perfect, her expression composed once more. From across the room, no one would guess at the bombshell she had just dropped. I stood frozen, champagne glass in hand, as the implications washed over me. I still had a chance at motherhood, a chance Maxwell had deliberately kept from me. The next morning I called Patricia. "I need your help with something," I said when she answered. "Something complicated." 6 months later, I sat in a hospital room, holding my newborn daughter. She had my eyes and Maxwell's chin, a perfect blend of us both. The legal battle for custody of the embryos had been brief but intense. Maxwell had fought me initially, more out of spite than desire for more children, but public opinion had turned sharply against him when the story broke. What kind of man hides embryos from his wife while planning to leave her? The court of public opinion had been unequivocal, and eventually Maxwell's lawyers had advised him to settle. I received full rights to all 4 embryos, along with a substantial increase in child support for any resulting children. As I gazed at my daughter's perfect face, I felt no lingering attachment to Maxwell, no regret for our failed marriage. He had given me one precious gift, however unintentionally, and for that I would always be grateful. Maxwell and Vivian's divorce was finalized around the same time my daughter was born. The tabloids reported that she had received primary custody of their twins, with Maxwell granted weekend visitation. His company stock had taken a hit from the negative publicity surrounding both divorces, and rumors circulated that the board was considering replacing him as CEO. I found I didn't care. My focus was entirely on my daughter and the life we would build together. A life defined not by what I had lost, but by what I had found, my strength, my voice, and now my family. Do you believe some things happen for a reason, even when they seem like the worst betrayal at the time? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe if you believe that sometimes our greatest pain can lead to our greatest joy.